Okay, so one last look at the portfolios as they were generated as individual files. Everything seems to be working. Always manage to click on the first button that's open, so it looks like nothing's happening. Anyway, they're all working as advertised. I did run into a slight problem with the black where this was getting lost, so I made this pop-up box here gray in this particular movie, and everything else is working as it's supposed to. Okay, so now it's time to start assembling. So I'm going to do a new canvas file. It's going to be 1500 by 1000, and the frame rate is going to be 30 frames per second. I'll go ahead and center it. Okay, now I'm going to open up first. I'm going to open up my portfolio buttons in here. These guys, pop menu. Click on the folder. Everything's set up. They're all set up the same way. Right click, copy layers. Come back over here, right click, paste layers. And in this one, I'm going to move the actions to the top. These will be my main actions, and I'll use this as a reference for everything else. Okay, I think everything's okay. I think I'm going to put this over in this corner, so I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to select Edit Multiple Keyframes, and it opens up this clamp that you can open up, and wherever you have selected in here, you can select everything now. And now I'm collectively moving all those individually together. So it'll be in that upper left-hand corner. So turn that off, and we'll give it a quick test so you can see what that did. So here's my pop-up, and you'll notice that the name is now over here on this side. Okay, so now I'm done with the pop-up, and I'll save the change, whatever it was I made. And now I'll go to the RGB, and I'll select that folder, copy it, the layers, and go here, select layer number 1, the bottommost layer, and do paste layers. And now I'm going to take this, all of these layers are going to be the next frame over. Okay, so I'm going to replace this guy in here with this one over here, which means now I've got a different label. So this is RGB. I'll copy that. I'm going to go back to my first frame, and I'm going to call my actions window, and I actually have it open in my other window, so I got to drag it over to this screen. And here on the red, I'll replace that with RGB. I'll close that from here. So I can test this now, and it'll work. So we'll go to RGB, and this is going to work fine. But it's not fine because I'm not taking advantage of the fact that I want to be able to locate my functions in one location. Right now it's set up so that the function will keep on appearing over and over again. If it runs this way, it's going to repeat all this text 3 times, and I only want it to show up once. So this information I no longer need this stage because that's actually being set as a variable in the first keyframe. This I need over here because that's going to call up the function along with this array information. This over here is what I want to get rid of. Now right now the way the function is set up is so that it runs in this keyframe. I need to move it over to the first keyframe, and this is where the labels and whatnot. Let me move this out of the way. That's this keyframe here. And I need to paste this down here. Now it's not going to work, and the reason is because the global function is not a global function yet. I can't even get there. It's recognizing an error in the code. So let me come back over here and make my function that I just brought in into a global function. So this over here, this setup, needs to be set up like this. So I'm going to take this, X that out, put it in front over here, paste it, and put an equals in front of it. Normally you would put in a VAR in front of the function, but without the VAR, this variable name becomes a global variable. And so now when I run this and test it, and I go to the RGB, now I'm back in business. And the nice thing about this function is that this function is going to control the other frames as well. So now I just need to go get them and edit them correctly. Okay, so that takes care of the green, and I don't need to save that. And now we'll go after CMYK. And as before, I'm going to copy the layers. I'm going to come back over here, click on this most bottom layer, and paste the layers. I'm going to drag this out here one frame past this one over here, so I'm going to grab those and drag them there. And I'm going to take this and put it up on top where it belongs. This one in here is CMYK, copy that, and I'm going to go to my actions on the first frame and go to the top here where my label is. So right over here is where CMYK is going to end up. Close that for now and go back here and get rid of that extra function information. I don't need any of this over here, so I'll just delete all of that. And I don't need this stage declaration. That's already been set up. So I have enough to test. And we'll come over here. Now we have a CMYK button. And this is working based on the other function. So now we'll go grab the last one. Well, let me put this one away here. I don't like to have too many files on open. I don't need to save that. So now we'll go grab the last one here. Whoops. And close that. And go to the timeline. Grab the folder. And we'll copy the layers. We'll come back over here. Click on the empty layer at the bottom. Right click and paste layers. And we'll click and drag this over to that spot. Move this to the very top. Open that up. And let me pull this out of here so I can make it a little bit bigger. And the function goes away. And so too does the declaration to this stage. Okay, so that takes care of that. And it should work. And the last thing I want to get rid of is this yellow section in here, so I'll select that. Do a Shift F5. Get rid of that. Let's see what it does. So we'll come over here. RGB still there. CMYK still working. And now we're going to go, forgot to name Newton, so I got to go back to name him. Okay, so this is going to be Newton. And come back over here and go to my code there. And blue becomes Newton. And I don't need yellow anymore at all. And so let's see what that looks like. So yellow is gone. It says Newton there. I'll have to do something about those background colors, but it's working. The setup is for the portfolio. Now the last thing I want to do is I want to go to my preferences. on my document preferences. So I'm clicking on nothing. So nothing is selected. That gets me to here. And here what I want to do is I want to turn center and responsive to both. Hit OK. Now when I preview this, it's centered. It's a little hard to see because the background's white. Let's change that. So I'll make this a light gray. Okay, let's test that. There it is. And so we can scale that around. And we can go to RGB. This still scales. This tracks really tightly wherever you select, which is nice. And it doesn't matter what the scale is on this. And if it gets smaller, it still tracks really nicely. It moves a little bit, but it's hardly noticeable. That may have more to do with the way it averages out. So I actually have this zoomed back a little bit. And so there we go. There's the size. So in the last movie, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a CSS rule that's going to change my background. But before I do that, I'm going to go through some steps to save this file so that everything functions correctly as a project. So it's a little tricky, but you should be saving your file this way because when we bring in a background, the asset's going to have to go somewhere, and the more files you have open in a location, the harder it is to figure out what goes where. So that'll be in the next movie as well.